Let's start. What is this complex? So first off, well, right now today, outside Tucson, Arizona, there's a place called Mount Graham, and it's about 10,000 feet. It is a dark sky area, meaning the stars are really bright. There's very, very little ambient light. The telescopes have to fight, and so it became a really great place for telescopes to go. So right now today, there are 3 telescopes on top of Mount Graham, again, outside Tucson. 3, advanced telescopes up there looking at the stars every night up on Mount Graham.
Welcome back. Today is going to be a fun one. John, you came up with the title of your book, I think, from this story that you're going to tell us.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Why don't you get us started?
I will. So we're going to take a little detour. We've been going down kind of this science and biblical perspective of a lot of different topics in this podcast, and we have some more to come. And I know our last one we kind of talked about, obviously a nice segue into demons and demonology, but we're actually not going to do that today. Today we're taking a little detour, and we are going to talk about the Mount Graham International Observatory Complex. So it is just a total curveball, and we're going to have some fun. And yes, the title of the book did in fact come from this in multiple different paths. It came from this location. So,
right.
So we're going to talk about
how on Earth. You had a book, but you didn't have the title. And I remember we were talking about what should we name it?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So we're going to talk about how that came to be. And this place is absolutely fascinating. And okay, how do I start us off here? Because there's some conspiracy theories around this place. I'll fully admit a few years back, I fell into it too. We're going to get into that, talk about it. I actually feel a little bit bad for the workers at Mount Graham. We'll explain what it is, but the people up there have got to be so annoyed by people like me. So we're going to have some fun getting into it. So let's just talk about what the heck is the Mount Graham International Observatory Complex. Let's start there.
Just to be clear, you never like you were not on social media at all or anything. So it wasn't like you went out publicly, hey, this is what I'm thinking is going on here. You never, It was like more fun conversations with just friends and family. It was just silly. So you didn't cross any line. You didn't come out public with like this weird story and this crazy thing.
No, I did not. I mean, just some people at our church, I did, full disclosure. But, and I look back now and I'm like, I wish I hadn't done that, but no, it's still, nothing. We didn't do anything wrong. And
just rabbit holes for all of us.
But there's another book, not by me, that somebody wrote. We're going to get into it. And I'm sure that really annoyed the people up at Mount Graham. So a fun one. Okay, let's start. What is this complex? So first off, right now today, outside Tucson, Arizona, there's a place called Mount Graham, and it's about 10,000 feet. And it is a dark sky area, meaning the stars are really bright. There's very, very little ambient light that the telescopes have to fight. And so it became a really great place for telescopes to go. And so right now today, there are 3 telescopes on top of Mount Graham, again, outside Tucson. The 3 telescopes there's one called the SMT, which stands for the Sub-Millimeter Telescope, and that's owned by the University of Arizona. There is the Large Binocular Telescope. They call that the LBT, and that's owned by a whole different consortium of 10 different people, institutions and whatnot. And then there's the VATT, the VATT, which stands for Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, and that's a joint venture between the Vatican and the University of Arizona. So we have 3, advanced telescopes up there looking at the stars every night up on Mount Graham.
Just to stop you there,
sure.
There's nothing wrong with studying science, right? That's part of what we talk about, right? Is the science and the Bible and, and different things. Where do they coexist and things like that? But I do find it a little odd that the Vatican would have there's nothing wrong with studying science, but why do they have this telescope up
Sure.
here?
That was how I got to this place because obviously I was writing a book, the very first book I was researching, I was doing a book on outer space and battles and whatnot out in outer space. But there was also as we talked about in one of our previous podcasts, there's also going back in time, which, I'm not going to spoil the book, but we're also looking back in time before the world before the world of Adam and Eve. So we have both of these kind of things and looking on that, researching on that, discovered that the Vatican does have 2 telescopes. Actually, they have VATT, which you just mentioned, and they have another one in Castel Gandolfo, I think it's called, which is outside Rome. It's at the papal summer palace, and they have another telescope there. So immediately seems that question. Why does the Vatican have 2 telescopes? They got to be spending millions of dollars running these things every year. What are they looking for? I understand NASA have on them and all these other different science organizations having. Why does the Vatican have it? And so that's kind of what got me to this Mount Graham place. So to answer that question, I don't know. But where we go back in the conspiracies, we're going to answer, what people thought why they had this telescope, and it gets pretty dang interesting. So we're going to get there. I will answer one part of that question that was back in the 1500s and 1600s and 1700s. The Vatican had telescopes because they were trying to understand the calendar and stuff like that. They had very rational reasons why they were, and they were one of the leading scientific organizations back then. So they were looking for how many, the rotation of the moon and the stars and all that to try to figure out what correct calendar should be and yada, yada, yada. Now, I don't know. But let's go back into the 1800s. And as America has, gone through all the Civil War and whatnot, I think this is post-Civil War, we're spreading west. And the Apache tribes, Native Americans, the Apache tribes were getting pushed and pushed and pushed. And they were eventually given this area of Arizona, modern-day Arizona, where Mount Graham resides. And this Mount Graham is a holy place to the Apache. I think they're called the Western Apaches, but we're just going to call them the Apache tribes. It's a holy place. They believe that these mountain spirits, they call gone something. I'm not going to, I'm probably butchering it. I don't mean to, but that these mountain spirits lived there. And they felt like Mount Graham specifically was one of those places where the spirit realm and the physical realms kind of collide. In a sense, a doorway. And the spirit realms would bring healing to the land. They would bring healing to the native tribes there in the area. And they would also banish evil at this gateway between the spirit and the natural on Mount Graham itself. So let's just keep that in our back pocket. So eventually, as America is spreading and spreading and spreading, and we just keep taking more and more and more land, and there's more and more treaties with the Apache and the Americans just keep breaking these treaties, and eventually they're down to only 25% of the original land that was promised them, and then we even decided to take that. So the Forestry Service eventually, I think it was in 1902, don't quote me on that, but I think it was 1902, the Forestry Service took over Mount Graham completely. And then in 1953, again, I think, it was Mount Graham was brought into the Coronado National Forest. And at that point, that was it. The Apache tribes were banished from their own lands, their own ancestral lands. They couldn't even go up there and do any ceremonies without prior written approval from the U.S. government. So there was a whole big deal about all of this. There was a lot of, fighting and debates and newspaper articles for and against, but a lot of big money got poured in onto the government side because, interesting, the Vatican and the University of Arizona in the 80s decided they want to build telescopes up there on Mount Graham, and that really angered the Apache tribes. Not only was their land been taken, now they were not being able to go up there and do their ceremonies. They felt like that doorway between the spirit and the natural was corrupted. And now we're going to build telescopes up there.
And so why there? Is it significant, like, to have a telescope like in a certain direction or a certain height? Is it
Sure.
like, because I'm like thinking, what doesn't seem worth the fight, just go somewhere else.
Same thing I thought when I started looking into it, because it is a tall mountain. It is a great place to view, but there are other tall mountains. I can't speak to why they chose that specific area. The science community says it was just such a perfect place. We could get up there, and it's a perfect place for telescopes, and it's big. The plan was to put 20 of them up there.
Wow.
They were going to put 20 telescopes between the Vatican and the University of Arizona, and other organizations as well. They're going to put 20 on top of Mount Graham. So that's kind of the sciencey side. They said that's what we're going to do.
So you really don't know why they they seem to have to or prefer this specific area.
Right. We don't know 100%, but they just said it's the perfect place to view the stars.
Maybe because it's close to you said University of Arizona?
Well, it's outside Tucson, so University of Arizona. Oh, yeah, it's in Tucson, isn't it? Arizona State's in Phoenix. So, yes, it was close.
So maybe that, I don't know.
I can't speak to them. I just know that they say it's the perfect place to do,
Right. Gotcha.
astronomy work.
Okay.
The conspiracy comes in because, well, I'll come back to it because you'll start to see there is a conspiracy because on the Apache side, and the people who are more on the Apache side, it's like, well, is there an ulterior motive to why they chose Mount Graham? Again, from the Apache side, it's at a place where the spirit realm and the physical realm are very, very close. Yeah, right. And there was a ton of money. Now, there were big fights. This was in the in the late 80s, I think. The big fighting, big money going on the government side to try to make this happen. And of course, the poor Apache tribes lost. Yeah. And Mount Graham started happening. And these telescopes, the first ones went live. So the VATT telescope went live in 1993 after, I think, 4 years of construction up there. Now we have the VATT telescope. The Vatican's running it. And that's kind of the end of it. No conspiracies at this point. They're just doing sciencey work, and were they ever going to spread 20 across on the whole mountaintop? Who knows? But this conspiracy starts coming in because there's a book that gets written in 2012.
Well, I'm intrigued already because I'm like, wait a second, what? Like, if this really was some kind of like portal, or something like that, then what does a telescope have to do with that? It's so interesting.
Well, I think you can start to see where this conspiracy may start to get formed because you have, you have this place where theoretically the spirit realm and the physical realm cross over. And the Vatican just happens to build a telescope there of all places they could choose in the entire planet.
Which is a religious organization.
They just happen to choose the one mountain. I mean, the Apache, again, were many of the mountain gods came from many of the mountains, but this Mount Graham was quite specific. Of course, they don't call it Mount Graham. They have an Apache language name for it. They have Mount Graham itself is mentioned in 32 different traditional Apache like songs, worship songs that they have, ceremonial songs. That's how special this place is to them. Right. So why did the Vatican, of all places across the entire planet, they chose that one place where the Apache believe the spirit and then a physical crossover. So you can start to see where this conspiracy might start to form, right?
Weird.
So it gets a little crazier when this book launches. Now I'm going to give the name of it. I've never read it. Okay, so I'm just going to be full disclosure. I've not read this book. It sure sounds interesting, but it's called Exo Vaticana Petrus Romanus, which means the last pope. So Petrus Romanus, the last pope, Project Lucifer, starting to sound like the name of my book, right? And the Vatican's astonishing plan for the arrival of an alien savior. Okay, that's a mouthful. The Exo Vaticana, so obviously the Vatican, Petrus Romanus, the last pope, Project Lucifer, and the Vatican's astonishing plan for the arrival of an alien savior. These guys, these authors, and again, I can't speak to all the specifics of their book, but they obviously started writing that the Vatican believes, specifically the Jesuits within the Vatican, believe that Jesus is not the only savior, that there are aliens out there, and all throughout the galaxy there are aliens, and they have their own version of Jesus in some way. The second head of the Trinity is different. In fact, let me just read it. This is something from the book. Not only is Pope Francis I, now he's our current pope, not only is Pope Francis I destined to disclose the existence of alien life, okay, but he will endorse a radical exo-theological position of alien saviors on other worlds, which is promoted by the Jesuit community. So apparently within the Jesuit community, they're saying like there's alien saviors out there. That is the idea that alien worlds may have had their own unique experience of the second aspect of the Christian Trinity, and alien Jesus Christ may have lived and died on more than one exoplanet. Okay, so this book gets out there.
Right. Okay.
And of course, it's like, that's a great conspiracy of itself. The Jesuits really believe that Jesus was in fact an alien, or that aliens interacted with their own version of Jesus. I have not read the book. I don't know specifically where he's
going
on that, right?
Yeah. But this book you can buy. I mean, it's not like it's like
you can go buy it
or anything.
Exactly right. So I think it came out in 2013.
Gotcha.
The second part of the book was, I said Petrus Romanus, Project Lucifer. So there's actually 2 Lucifer projects out there that are beyond my book, right? I'm going to tell you the first one. You can start to see how all these weird conspiracy theories start to form like this crazy world that I admittedly fell into. NASA has a Lucifer project.
Okay.
And it's way beyond, like, I'm an engineer. I can't even speak to what they're talking about. Arrays of blah, blah, blah. I don't, it doesn't matter. It's all sciencey stuff that I don't get, way beyond my knowledge. But there are conspiracy theorists who say this Lucifer project, there was a spaceship. I don't know if you remember, it was called Cassini, and they were going to crash land it into Saturn. This was years back. And the conspiracy theorists say that the plutonium that is on the Cassini spacecraft, which they use for powering the spacecraft, because you get too far away from the sun, and solar panels can't pick up those sun's rays, can't generate enough electricity. So they have another powering system through plutonium. I think it's plutonium-238. They believe that NASA was going to try to crash Cassini into Saturn, not to burn up the entire spacecraft and make it disappear, including the plutonium and everything, but that in fact the plutonium, once it got far enough into the atmosphere of Saturn, it would have so much pressure that the plutonium would explode, causing a chain reaction and turning Saturn into a sun. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. There were definitely some conspiracy theorists that thought that was going to be the case, and that this was going to happen in 2013.
Ah.
Yeah, exactly. So it all happened, and the spacecraft burned up like NASA said, and there was no problems. But that was the belief from certain people that they were trying to make a new mini sun, and then that mini sun would heat up all of Saturn's moons, and turning Titan, which is an ice moon, they were trying to turn that into a human habitable planet. This stuff's crazy, all right? But that was what people thought, the Lucifer Project from NASA's perspective. And now we have to marry that too with the Lucifer Project on Mount Graham's perspective. Excuse me, I'm not going to say Mount Graham. I'm talking about VATT, the Vatican Telescope on Mount Graham. And they had, according to these authors, named their telescope, VATT, the VATT, was actually named Lucifer. Okay, so this is what they were saying, or people were saying that they were saying. Now, Lucifer, obviously we know that's the devil, but Lucifer is an acronym up there, and it stands for Large Binocular Telescope, Near Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. It's quite a mouthful. And so the thinking was, why would they name their telescope Lucifer? It seems quite odd for a Vatican telescope to name their equipment after the devil. And so they believe then that the Lucifer Project was to take the Lucifer Telescope to find the alien race that Jesus, right, yeah. We just talked about.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so you got the Lucifer Project NASA thing kind of getting intermingled with the Lucifer Project based on the VATT telescope, and all this stuff's getting intermixed into this crazy conspiracy. And it was a lot of fun. This is all 2012, 2013. I was researching in 2015, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of it's not true, but it was a lot of fun at the time. And so I'm going to go to 2015 for me personally. I was looking at all this stuff. I saw this book. I saw this telescope named Lucifer. Mm-hmm. I saw it all. And I was like, oh, this is unbelievable. This is so cool. And I didn't research it enough. Right. And I saw the name Lucifer Project. I saw the two different Lucifer projects. I thought, what a great name for a book. So that's where this came from. And we added Lucifer into the book. It's certain pieces is irrelevant to the, it's just part of the storyline. It doesn't mean much, but we added kind of that Lucifer thing in there just because it was fun. And had a really good time with this. I will say, I saw a symposium that the Jesuits at Mount Graham were putting on at the VATT telescope. I believe it was at the VATT telescope, but it doesn't matter. They were the ones putting the symposium on. And so what we're talking about, this conspiracy, was not helped by the Vatican folks at Mount Graham themselves, because they had a symposium. I saw it with my own eyes, and I'd love it if any of you guys know how to use like the Internet Wayback Machine. I tried doing this. I'm not technologically savvy enough to find it, but if anybody can go back into this 2015 timeframe, there was a symposium, and it was called "Were You Baptized by an Alien?" So while you have this book, this Exo Vaticana book, right, and it's spreading all this, and it got popular. It's still, I think on Google, it's still on Amazon, I think it's like number 61 in Christian books or something. It's still way out there. A lot of people are still reading it. Okay. And it was saying that the Vatican, specifically the Jesuits, were using this Lucifer telescope on Mount Graham to find the alien race that Jesus came from, right? That's his book. It's out there. It's spreading like wildfire. And then they put on a symposium called Were You Baptized by an Alien? You talk about stoking the fires, right?
Right.
I saw this symposium. Like, I didn't attend it, but I saw the website for it. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. They actually believe that Jesus, who baptized us as Christians, right? That Jesus is actually from a race of aliens. And there are some people like, did he crash land on Earth? Did he come here on purpose to be what he said he was, but he was actually an alien? You know, who knows? Did he get his powers to heal and his powers to teleport and his powers to know our thinking because he's actually an alien? He has different DNA. Like, all this stuff was spreading like wildfire all throughout this time. And I can't believe they put on this symposium. So I fell right into it, as you know, and I went running around, look at this, the Vatican thinks Jesus is an alien. And I ran around, but again, I don't think I caused any damage, you know, but it was a lot of fun to think about and to talk about, because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. So maybe we should land on the reality of all this stuff, maybe.
Right. So,
do you have any questions about any of that before I just go into what really is?
No, but I will just say this. If any of that, like, I know you like discovered, because you dug further, and you always do. You fully vet things, especially before you
fully, but I try to.
You try to, yeah. You try to do your, duty there. But I will say, if any of this, it has some validity and stuff, and clearly it does, because there's that book that talks about some of the stuff, right?
So, yeah.
But I would venture to guess that it's a very small sect of the Catholic, church
that might actually believe
that
this.
might actually believe in it. I don't think it's like the normal, Catholic theology.
Yeah, we're not going on
to
St. Teresa's down the street or something, right? And they're teaching us just, I
right.
agree.
I don't think
if there's any truth to it, I do think it's a very small sect.
It's just like the Protestant church. We've divided in so many different ways, and there's a lot of people that believe a lot of different things. So I'm sure that's true about a Catholic church as well. There's probably a lot of Catholic churches that completely divert from from their theology completely or something. Yeah. So it doesn't shake me. I'm not like, oh my gosh, the Catholics or anything like that. I would think if any of this has validity, it would be a very small sect, I would assume.
Or it's just all fake.
Or it's all fake in general.
It just still makes for a fun story.
Right.
So let's land on then what's kind of really going on. So, again, you have this, theoretically, this spirit world crossover mountain. The Vatican just happens to choose that mountain to build a telescope, which they're going to name Lucifer, where they're going to go out and look for the alien race that Jesus come from. I mean, yeah, wow, what a story. It's probably all false, but you can see why it got all blown up back in that time frame. Okay, so in reality, according to the Mount Graham website, they did have a part on a telescope named Lucifer. It was not on the Vatican telescope. It was on the LBT telescope, and it was called Lucifer. I have no idea why they named this part on their telescope Lucifer. They were getting so much heat in that time frame, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. They renamed it Lucy. I think they renamed it Lucy in 2012, maybe. So they must have taken heat a little bit earlier. They renamed it Lucy, not Lucifer, just because of crazy conspiracy theorists like myself probably like talking about it. So, no, I do not believe the VATT telescope was ever named Lucifer. The LBT telescope had a part called Lucy on it. So that's one thing we have to kind of just debunk right now. And if you go on the internet and you look this up, you're going to see people have debunked this thing left and right. No, it's not called Lucifer. It's called Lucy now. But kind of ruins a fun story. But unfortunately, that I think is the truth. Have the Apache lost their...
Or fortunately, that is the truth.
Well, yeah, I guess. But if you're a storyteller, it's a lot of fun. Does the Vatican believe that Jesus is an alien? I have no idea, like we just talked about. There probably is some people. It's probably a very, very, very small group, if at all. Did Cassini turn Saturn into a sun? No, it did not, just like NASA said. And the Apache still have lost their mountain, unfortunately. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of where the name of the book came from. Those are the different Lucifer projects out there. It was so much fun at the time. I really still enjoy it, but unfortunately, I don't think there's much to see here. But it sure made for a great story. And again, the Vatican sure did not help themselves with that symposium titled, "Were You Baptized by an Alien?" So that is the story of the Mount Graham International Observatory. You can go visit it today. They actually do tours. You and I are going to go out there someday, some year. We're going to go check this place out. We've seen so much about it, talked so much about it. I want to see it. I want to step foot on those halls and look at that telescope that we talk so much about. So,
oh, yeah, that would be great. Why don't you close us out?
Awesome. Thank you so much again for listening. It was a much shorter one today. We just thought we want to go on this little fun, wild ride. We have a few more coming up of just kind of these more curveball-y type of podcasts. But thanks for joining us. Again, we could always use your likes on these videos if you like it. And please subscribe to the channel. You really help us out. Thank you again.